Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation to actually speak at this historical event, which is the inaugural of the summit. And I think, well, I'm made to understand that this is the first summit, and therefore it is quite an honor and a privilege to be able to speak at such an event. But I know that the reason why we're here is because we are interested in understanding technology or teaching with technology. What I'll try and do is to just spend some time talking about some of the things that I have had the opportunity to understand about technology, and also given the kind of time that I've spent at the University of Cape Town working in education technology sphere, where among other things I convened the education technology program since 2007. The program has taken different kinds of forms, but you can almost more or less begin to understand how far we've come in understanding the field. The first and foremost, an important start point is this story that I would like to tell you about a lady that was walking a dog that was her dog, or not somebody's dog, but she was walking this dog, and a gentleman who is so scared of dogs was approaching the other side. Now he took a pause. Look at the kind of dog here. He paused because he could not proceed. He asked the question, does your dog bite? Because he wanted to know that answer before he can proceed. And she says, no, my dog does not bite. And a few seconds later, the dog charged on him and beat him. Of course, he was so aggrieved because he said, but I asked you, and you told me that your dog does not bite. Her response then was, my dog is at home and it does not bite. This is not my dog. Now, what we read from there is that there was a question whether the dog did bite. The answer was correct, but the problem persisted. The reason there was that we can ask questions and get the answers, but still have the problem without being addressed. What that means really is that we need to be able to know how to ask the right questions, which are directed at the right problem. Because if we don't do that, we would not be able to address the problem for which we are querying about. Education technology, or the use of technology, does require us to be able to ask different types of questions. The questions we ask leads to the answers we get. Whether we are asking the right questions or not, we are going to get the answers, and it's going to influence the kind of results that we get. When we look at Cape Town has a water crisis for some time now. I'm sure you know that there has been a water crisis in Cape Town. There's been a drought there, and there's been a campaign to ensure that we all use water wisely or economically. These kind of initiatives, one of the things about the Cape Town and the water crisis is that almost everyone you meet in Cape Town has something to say about the solution or about the water crisis. Whether the kind of conversations are correct or not, that is immaterial. Everyone has something to say. The water crisis in Cape Town has actually created a very good space for conversation. Spaces for conversation, conversations that we could never have had before, because there was nothing shared, there was nothing in common that we can talk about. So you meet somebody and you can talk about the water crisis. You can talk about, now, what are we going to do? What do you think about the water crisis? Now, I overheard this conversation, which I'm going to share with you, about the water crisis. Remember, most of the people have got interesting suggestions. So there were these boys who were having a heated conversation about what to do about the water crisis. So one gentleman said, you know what we need to do? If every household can draw 100 liters of water from their house and then go and pour that in the dam, then we could solve this water crisis. And then the friend says, no, don't listen to him. He's actually talking rubbish. Don't listen to him. I have a better suggestion. And everyone started waiting. What is your suggestion? And he said, we should not use cold taps in the homes because that is municipal water. We should use hot taps because hot water doesn't come from a municipality, it comes from the geyser. And these are some of the conversations or discussions that we actually engage with. Some of them very intelligent, others not so intelligent, but they are conversations anyways. Okay, they are interesting conversations. My own take on the water crisis is this. This is my own take. Most of us as households are actually asked to ensure that we don't use so much water. But you tell me, how would you know how much water you're using if you can't have access or if you're not looking at the meter? In Cape Town, I don't know how it is like here in Devon, but most of the houses in Cape Town, the water meter is outside the house, buried in the garden somewhere. And only these municipal people, when they come, they go to this place in the garden and they read the water meter. The households hardly ever go outside to read the water meter. Because this water meter has got a lot of details, including they can show you whether there is a leakage in the house of the water, whether you haven't closed the tap. There is something there that indicates for you what is going on in terms of your usage of water. My question is, why would you bury such an important instrument in the garden? How could you expect people to logically control what they can't even know what they are controlling? You know, how do you manage what you can't see? Do you understand my point? It's like designing a car and then putting the dashboard in the boot, so that when you are driving, you can't see anything on the dashboard. You need to go to the boot to read the dashboard. But then at that point, you would have stopped the car. Then what's the point of the dashboard? What is the point of water meters if they are not accessible to you every day? I last read my water meter in the garden about 4 weeks ago, and that was just to ensure that it's still there. Now we need to be able to then look at some of these things that if we are going to make any difference with technology, or indeed any difference with anything, we need to be able to challenge the status quo and ask questions that we normally take for granted. Because if we don't ask questions of those things that we take for granted, we cannot improve anything. Remember, you can't improve anything that you can't question. I mean, if you can't question, you can as well forget about improving it. Having said that, someone said these words: the more we find answers to questions we have, the more questions about answers we found. What that means is that there is no stop to asking questions. We ask questions, we find answers, and then we interrogate those answers. So we are asking further questions about the answers we found. The end result is that we are in a continuous state of improvement. But if we don't ask questions, we are not going to find the answers. If we don't find the answers, we have nothing more to ask, because we haven't found the answers to the first questions that we had. I don't know whether you understand my point. Any kind of continuous learning process is an outcome of continuous questioning. We need to continuously question. When we have found answers to what we are questioning, we don't stop there. We still need to improve the answers that we found. And we can only improve the answers that we found if we ask questions about the answers we found. Does that make sense? I found this on Twitter. The next thing is that when you look at these very slow turtles, a very slow moving animal, and then we equip it with technology. You see the technology? We empower the turtles with wheels, with technology, wrap the technology around it. And we put a firework there and light the match. What is going to happen? It's going to be launched like a rocket. It is going to have a shock. I think it's going to have a shock because it will move at the fast pace, fast rate as never before in its entire life. What you really want to do is that you want to minimize that shock. The other thing is that what you also want to do is that why do you want these poor tortoise? Of course, you have put the helmet there for safe landing. The helmet is for safe landing. What is the whole point of equipping this slow animal with such powerful technology to move at a fast pace as never before in its life when there is no purpose? Where do you want to go so fast? It has no business to go fast. It's not running late. It is not running late. There is no deadline at all. It has its time to go and take its snail speed to go and visit the peers or family wherever it lives. If you are going to use technology, there must be a purpose. You must have a reason. You must position oneself for where they want to go that fast. Do you really want to go that fast? If you want to go that fast, where? What I'm trying to say is that you need to find the points where you can make the most impact. If the impact is about being able to do things that you normally cannot physically do, then there is a good point to use technology. You need to identify those points where you can make most have impact with the technology. And there are a lot of those points. And I should be able to talk about some of those as we go. When we look at the education system globally, for those of us that are visually or challenged by statistics, you don't have to worry about statistics. because these are visual representations. You can see the size of these maps. Pay attention to the size of these maps. Look at the size of that, look at the size of Africa, that's the primary education. This is what secondary education looks like. I want you to notice that Africa is becoming slimmer. Yes? Look at what's happening to tertiary education. Can you see Africa? Can you see what has happened to Africa? That is the state of tertiary education. Now, look, I can roll this back. Secondary, primary. Can you see visually? Primary, secondary, tertiary. When we look at that, when I looked at the visual maps, the similar visual maps of poverty, Africa was the biggest. And when I look at this, be no surprise. Education, tertiary education, and development somehow seem to be aligned to some extent. This is how many people we are, if you like, this is tertiary education, this is tertiary education, and these are the kind of people that are supposed to be developing Africa. Okay? So you can now understand why the poverty map, the challenges in Africa are so huge, because these ones here are the ones who are supposed to be asking questions on how do we solve these problems that Africa is facing. We can see from these visual maps that education has a big challenge, and we need to be able to find ways of addressing this challenge. If we don't do that, there is no hope for us. If we don't do that, we need, now I should also be able to suggest to you that these visual maps did not happen overnight. These visual maps here is an accumulation of the current practices, is an accumulation of what we currently do, an accumulation of how we teach and how we have gone about teaching up until now. That is what leads us to this state. If we want to see any difference, we've got to do something different. And we've got to begin to do something different, not tomorrow. We must be able to begin to do something different now. Because if we don't do that, this will persist. What is the whole point of being educated if we can't contribute to addressing the problems and the challenges that we face in the community or in the society, or in the world? What is the whole point? Then what is education for? And I think that's what becomes useful. What is the education for? You'll be able to see that if we ask ourselves questions like that, what is the difference between those that are educated and those that are not? If we, those who are educated, cannot be able to probe and contribute to addressing some of these challenges that we face, how are we applying the knowledge that we have to address these problems? When you look at sport, such as soccer, some of you do play sport, like soccer. If you don't, others live in homes where people watch sport. I want to just confirm that you all have seen a field, a playing field. That's what I want to say. A playing field has got lines on it. Each of those lines means something. If you are a soccer player, you need to understand the meaning of these lines. However, the game has got a referee whose job is to ensure that they can enforce the rules of the game. I've awarded that. It's not a penalty. How do you know? Because you know the rules as well. Now, you tell me that if you've spent years playing sport on a pitch that is this flat, that is like this, and you know the rules, and you know how to win the game, I want to ask you, if the pitch changes to this, what is it that you are going to have to do to continue to win the game? That is the question to you. When the pitch changes, something has got to give. You have got to revisit how you play the game. You've got to revisit how to win the game. You've got to re-strategize. You really need to have a conference on the rules again. You need to meet and talk about what are we going to do now that we don't play on the flat pitch anymore. What are we going to do? Most of us continue to play the game as if nothing has changed, as if the pitch hasn't changed. It is no wonder that we continue to get surprised that we are not winning. So what is shocking us is that we are not winning anymore. We are not winning because the pitch has changed and we have changed nothing, and we are changing nothing. Now, that is the reality on the ground. That is the reality. That reality also means that most of us, we know, when I was a student decades ago, I know that I went to school, there was no internet. There was no internet at all. There was no mobile phones, nothing. Not even phones. My son says to me, how did you ever do education without internet and without mobile phones? Because they can't imagine education without it. I mean, you really have got to explain that we need to go to the library. All the books were in the library. We have to go walk to the library. And, we need to explain that. And that can't even come across to them. They can't imagine how. I mean, how can life happen without Wi-Fi? Okay. That is an important point. This is how we can be able to interpret this. Here we actually see the teacher, the professor there, writing 10x minus 5 is equal to 25, then x is equal to 3. The question that we have here, but Prof, you said yesterday that x was equal to 5. What has actually changed there is that the problem has changed, therefore the answer is different. What we see here is that he is living in the past when the answer was 5, when x was equal to 5. Yes, when the problem was different, x was equal to 5. Now the problem is different, x must change. It is that we really need to think about. If we don't do that, education and what we do as educators is very similar to this. We are square pegs trying to force our pedagogies in round holes. And we keep getting surprised why this square peg is not going through in a round hole. Something has got to give. If a square peg is to go in the round hole, something has got to give, not on the round hole. Remember, nothing is being chipped out here. Nothing. What is being chipped out here is from the square peg. The round hole is not changing. You need to change. We need to change. Not the learners. not the students, not the context, not the environment. That is not going to change. We need to change. This whole process of change, as you can expect, this square peg should be crying sometimes when these things have been chipped off them. It's a painful process to have to lose something. It's a painful process to do that. But we have got to do that. I was speaking to teachers just earlier this week, and some of them are saying we're just waiting for our retirement so that we can be out because we can't afford to do this. They can't afford to chip out anything. Oh, that retirement must come now. What we see of our students are very similar to this. 21st century students, very plugged in, very highly connected, most of them. Ears plugged with earpieces, listening to something, music or whatever, almost all the time. Almost all the time. Their study environment, depending on where they are, looks like that. They've got things open there, they've got whatever books, they've got whatever things going. They're watching something, and at the same time they're preparing for an exam. Have you seen people like this in your homes, somewhere? And it drives people mad, those who never grew up in this environment. It drives them mad. How can you prepare for an exam in this kind of way? Because for you and me, when we were studying and preparing for exams, everything must be switched off. It must be dead quiet. Not even a pin drop. Is that right? Everything must be dead quiet for you to study and to prepare for an exam. These are the kind of environments in which they study. And that's how they, somehow, cognitively, one would hope that these puzzle pieces are falling in place. I don't know. Cognitively. How do these puzzle pieces fall in place at cognitive level? The one asking the cognitive question, we are asking the cognitive question. Then the other thing that we want to do is that if we understand that this is the way these 21st century students behave or look like or study or this is the kind of environment, what we need to do is to look at how do we harness this so that these puzzle pieces fall in place. Because we are not going to call these to the 19th century. Okay. We are not going to drag these into the 19th century. You need to get to the 21st century. We need to go to the 21st century as opposed to dragging them to the 19th century. The two are different. Education is not about a journey that moves from point A to point B. Most of us see education as one which will take you from one point to the other. It's like making a trip from Cape Town to Devon, one point to the other. Education should never be about that. Education should be about learning experiences. It is about a learning experience. When you take a train from one point to the other, it takes you from one point to the other. If you go to Ratanga Junction or wherever you actually have a ride like that, you start off from one point, you come back to the same point, but you have an unforgettable experience. If you've been on this, you'll never forget. You will never forget. That is the kind of experience we're talking about. We need to provide learning experiences that are unforgettable. Because anything else that students learn that does not give them that learning experience, they will forget that. But they will never forget a learning experience. or head knowledge, content knowledge, they're going to forget that. You ask me, I'll tell you that. Okay? They'll forget that. We need to provide and design for a learning experience. That's what we need. Just about 2 years ago, we asked academic staff, what do you use innovatively in your teaching? Academic staff at 22 universities in South Africa. So we did a study of 22 universities in South Africa asking academic staff, what are you using in your teaching innovatively? And they said this, they are using Sakai, Moodle, WebCT, and Blackboard at the time, they're using SMS and email and everything like that. Then we asked students, what are you using to learn? And the students said this. Now you tell me, why is it that what teachers are using or educators are using to teach, why is it not the same as what learners are using to learn? Look, I think that what education institutions need to carefully think about is that you cannot teach unless you understand how learning happens. We need to understand how learners learn or how students learn if we're going to teach them effectively. Because what is the point of teaching if learning is not happening? Why should these be different? Very similar to think about the very well-trained chefs. These trained chefs spend years studying. They study how to prepare food. Now, imagine chefs who have spent hours preparing these meals without talking to diners, without engaging the diners on what they want or what they eat or what they don't eat. And then these chefs continuously get themselves surprised that why don't learners eat or why don't diners eat what we prepare? Because they have also prepared the menu which is in this language. Chefs have prepared the food and they've prepared the menu. If the chefs have not had a conversation with the diners to actually engage the diners so that you can be able to ensure you can align what you're doing and what you're preparing for the diners, you should not be surprised that the diners are not necessarily eating what you're preparing. It's not because they're not hungry, it's because there's just a huge mismatch between what they eat and the way you prepare it, or the way you have actually done it. So both are correct. The chefs are right in there's nothing wrong with what they prepare, and there's nothing wrong with the diners, except that there's a mismatch. We need to find better and quicker ways of ensuring that we can address this. Someone said, most effective edutech teachers seamlessly navigate between and know when to switch to teach technology, teach through technology, teach with technology, and let technology teach while they guide learning in order to achieve learning outcomes. We need to be able to ensure that all these facets come together. When do you teach technology? And when do you teach through technology? And when do you teach with technology? And when do you allow technology to teach? These things need to come together. We need to know when to do this. If we don't do that and integrate that in how we teach, we'll be missing the point. As educators, and this is the biggest challenge that we have as educators, because we need to ensure that these things are coming together, and oftentimes they can come together very quickly, and they need to come together very quickly. In the past, we would have an academic staff or a teacher who teaches technology, and somebody else who teaches through technology, and somebody else who teaches with technology, and then the other who teaches or who guides learning using as technology mediates that learning. What we need in the 21st century is to ensure that an educator can switch between these different roles. And the quicker we do that, the more effective we will be. There is an important thing that we can learn from how kids and other people learn or acquire different kinds of skills. If we look at these young people or whoever, even older people playing soccer, you must have heard them, or maybe when you were younger, you would be able to play sport and say, well, I'm Ronaldo, I'm Ronaldo. Have you seen young people call themselves names of soccer players like that? You've seen them. When they are playing the game, they give themselves names of these different kinds of experts. You have seen them. They call themselves that. I am Messi. And then they dribble like him. They will never be like him, but they dribble like him. That is very important. Because what these people, our young people, are doing by calling themselves that, they are trying to imitate these experts. They are trying to copy their skills. They are trying to learn from them. Because you need to be able to identify what you want to learn and where to copy that from. And I will be able to speak about that in a while now. Because if you look at all these artists, I saw this at Ndele in Kampala, where these different ladies, it's a cultural center where they put different kinds of pots on their heads, many different pots on their heads. They can start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and they can go on, and they balance these different pots on their heads. They walk like that. If you want to be able to walk and balance these things on your head, it's not enough to just say because that is a lady doing that, then any lady can do that. Right? It's not enough. You need to be able to imitate them, copy how they do that. You are going to break a few pots in the process of doing that. If you're so scared about breaking pots, you will never learn how to do this. You will never learn how to do this. A few pots will have to fall, they will have to break, but you need to continue to do that if you're going to acquire these kind of skills. It's going to take that kind of time to do that. We see this in a natural setting when the hen has got to train the chicks where to find food and what constitutes food as opposed to what is not. We have seen this. We actually watch this and we see the hen trying to really move with the chicks and doing all that, preparing these hens, these chicks, on where to find food and what is food and what is not. It is actually very useful copying and apprenticeship kind of process. This is apprenticeship. Each one of these, we need to be able to know how to learn from the experts. Learn from people that do things and learn how to imitate them. Because this whole process of imitation is what makes this chick to easily and one day become a hen that they can be able to coach others on what constitutes food and what is relevant food in different kinds of contexts. We see these as different kinds of puzzle pieces because learning is not about having all these different kinds of hay content, a lot of it. I'll tell you a story about my son when he was young and he was trying to play computer games, but he did not know how to read the instructions. He would navigate through the computer game, but whenever there was an instruction on to do something, he couldn't read because he hadn't started school. So the big sister, who was older, would always be invited or called upon by this young boy, the brother, to come and read, what is the computer saying? And sometimes the sister would get fed up and say, look, no, you should know how to read. My son, when he started school, he said to me that the first thing that he wants to learn is how to read. He wanted to know how to read so that he can play computer games. That was it. Whenever he was sick, he would still be able to say, I still have got to go to school. What if today the teacher is going to teach the class how to read? So all the time, that was the motivation, that was the reason for going to school. What he did not know is that reading is a collection of small bits and pieces. It doesn't just happen overnight. He didn't even realize that he has learned how to read over time. Yamamoto once said, start copying what you love. Copy, copy, copy. At the end of the copy, you will find yourself. We are in an education system which stops people from copying, and we look at copying as if it's evil, and we demonize copying. Is that right? Don't copy. I want to suggest to you that copying is not that bad. I want to suggest to you that we learn by copying, and we learn faster. When you imitate people like professional soccer players, you're actually trying to copy how they do things. When you imitate people that are cultural, they are trying to balance sports and how they work, you are copying so that you can learn from them. That is the kind of copying I'm referring to. Copying is to imitate. A very interesting book that Austin Kleon has put together, Copy Like an Artist. Yeah, you should steal like an artist. Steal like an artist. In that small book, Steal Like an Artist, he actually mentions the importance of copying. Otherwise, it will take forever for you to have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Copy and then build on that. If teachers can learn to copy from other teachers and schools, practices that work well, implement these in classrooms, we will multiply exceptional practices faster and set a new normal in education. Do we understand this point? I also found this on Twitter. Sorry? It's a good place. I found this there. You should get to Twitter. Yeah. Piaget once said, if you want to be creative, stay in part a child with the creativity and invention that characterizes children before they are deformed by adult society. Children are born creative, and we can see their creativity when they are young, before they start school. When they start going to school, slowly but surely, they start losing creativity because they come in contact with adults who stop them to imagine. Somehow they add too much structure, which becomes very constraining. That's what Piaget did there. So any creative adult that you know, you can be guaranteed that there is a child in them who survived being deformed by the adult society. There is a child in any creative adult. People who pushed back. I really think that our goal and our role as educators is to inspire creativity and innovativeness, and to make creativity and innovativeness a norm. If people have gone through your education or your class, or you have engaged with them, and you have been able to inspire them on to be creative and to be innovative, you would have actually accomplished the goal of education, in whatever sphere. As I get closer to ending my talk, there is an African proverb which says, a leopard you know will eat you with mercy. A leopard you know, or a leopard which knows you, will eat you with mercy. It won't be like very rough, like, it won't be like, it won't be, do you understand? The leopard, you know, is not going to eat you like it would other people. That's an African proverb. You don't think that's better? Now, I want to be able to spend time just talking about the leopard that we know, because a leopard that can eat you with mercy is much better than a leopard that is so aggressive. Now, let's think about this leopard, the leopard called mobile phones. At least this is a leopard we know. It's most likely to eat us with mercy as opposed to some leopard we don't know. If we are to appropriate mobile phones in education, at least we know this leopard. It might just eat us with mercy. It might not be as bad. Is that right? It might not just be as bad. I have actually engaged with students who have come to the university, and we put them in front of computers, and they can't even move the mouse. You know, they can't move the mouse to find things. They are just lost. I have actually said, okay, put these computers aside. Take your mobile phone out. And you will see the same students, how their eyes just pop out, and how that suddenly the excitement in the place, and suddenly they are so skilled that they can find things very easily. And suddenly the same students, they can do things that you can't even imagine. I mean, I have been surprised about that kind of difference. And I have been able to say, I would much rather be munched by a leopard I know. It will eat me with mercy. Well, we actually, let's see. I just want to describe for you some of the things that we have actually spent time doing to ensure that we can very quickly discard useful stuff from useless stuff. Most of us, you know that as much as you want to spend most of your time, what you call productive use of time on useful stuff, you can't tell what is useful unless you know what is useless. I mean, the useful stuff emerges from useless stuff. I mean, you can't, first these two things must coexist. You see, the useful and the useless must coexist before you can separate them. Is that right? I mean, if you don't do that, how can you possibly just pick useful stuff? How? You must have a basket of everything. And then you can say, useful, not useful, useful, not useful. I mean, that to me is the logical way of proceeding. Many people who discard things before they even can consider them, because they want to consider only useful stuff. I said, well, how do you, where are the useless? They just have a pack of useful stuff. I said, only these are useful. Where is the useless? They don't have. How could you ever be at the point where you just have a pack of useful stuff? If you are going to learn something, particularly in the use of technology, you need to be open to have a basket of stuff before you can separate useful and useless. The other is, who determines useful? Is it useful to you or useful to others? Who makes that value judgment of useful and useless? Oftentimes, some of the things that we consider to be useful as educators might just be useless for students and for the community as well, for the society. So we need to actually ask some of these kind of questions, because today, some of the things that in the useless basket might just find themselves in the useful basket. That is the reason why you need to have at least a toolbox, an arsenal of tools exposed to the different affordances. We call them affordances. You need to have a basket of tools in your toolbox. If you are a kind of person who would be able to say, well, I know a pliers and a star screwdriver, those are the useful tools, and you put them in your toolbox. Wherever you go, you just have a pliers and a star screwdriver. You tell me, how many problems are you going to solve with the pliers and the star screwdriver? Yeah. That is the reason why you need to have an arsenal of some of these. But you don't need to know everything. You just need to know something. Okay. What at the University of Cape Town, I have had the opportunity to start an initiative called Education Technology Quality Lab, which is a sandpit for adults. Sandpits are creative spaces where adults somehow they come to the space and just begin to play like kids, play with tools and play with the different things in a fun and non-judgmental way, so that by so doing, they discover how things work. Because if they do that, then they can easily say useful, not useful, useful, useless, okay? But you never predetermine this. What we do at this, in the sandpit sessions, adults in this case, they spend time, this is what sandpits look like. They're just fun play places like that. I'll just be able to, and we have actually run some of these to actually ensure that we can remove the fear that most of these adults tend to have with technology. We, in just about last year, we had 450 teachers in the Western Cape attend these sandpit sessions, and each one of these teachers created a digital portfolio. And the portfolios, they are effectively, they look like that. We've actually captured them like that. So each one of the 450 teachers who are non-technical, they were taken through processes to create a digital portfolio, which they currently continue to use. And we did that, and we still have a track of these artifacts that they created. Now, because we use fun, playful processes, all these teachers, they saw themselves as they can create something, they can go ahead and do even better, okay? So they were motivated by the fact that they can create something. And then once they do that, once they've gone through these processes, then they are able to say, well, I think this is useful, I can continue using this. This is not useful. But you can never decide before you have had an opportunity to play with this, because then you don't know. You have no basis on which to make a decision. So these are some of those portfolios. The other thing that I should be able to mention here is that you need to be driven by a question. And you need to be driven by a question if you are going to improve yourself and improve what you do. You need to be driven by a question because all kinds of innovative educators, they live with a question. They are driven by a question within themselves. A question whose answer is a continuous, they continuously find answers, question the question, find answers, question the answers, and continue living with the question. I want to share with you just the question that I believe that educators live with. Most educators, innovative educators live with. Innovative teachers in EduTech live with the question, how can I effectively use tools learners already have to co-create valuable and usable knowledge with them? That should be the question. Innovative teachers are going to ask this question. They will live with this question. How can I, as an educator, effectively use tools which learners already have to co-create with them valuable and usable knowledge? Valuable knowledge to them, not to you. Valuable knowledge to them. Because if it's valuable to them, that's where the value is. Who is judging the value? You have got content knowledge, you've got the pedagogy, you've got all that. But how do you ensure that these tools that learners have, or the students have with them, you are integrating them in ways that you are co-producing with them something that's of value? So here, this is what institutions provide. Institutions provide computer labs and this kind of technology. This is what learners have. Learners have got this. All you are trying to ask is, how can you use that? How can you really exploit that? We know that any kind of learning, any learning is an outcome of a conversation and interaction. Any learning is an outcome of conversation and interaction. You learn things by yourself only when you are in conversation and interaction with the world. That is how you learn stuff. You need to have interaction with, there must be interaction. The reason why I have learned that I can't go through the wall and it's hard because I have interacted with it. I have learned that I should not touch fire because I have had an interaction with it. Learning is an outcome of an interaction. There is an interaction. If you are learning by yourself, you are interacting with the world. You are either interacting with the world or you're interacting with people, you are interacting with your experiences. There is an interaction for learning to happen. You can actually be learning from one another because there is an interaction. And at the end of all that, and that is the reason why people do argue that if you put people together for a long, long time, all they do, they've spent time together, put them together many, many years together, you find that they will start saying the same things and be thinking almost the same things. You can be able to say, oh, I thought like that too. You are also saying what I'm saying, because they have had lots of exchanges like that. Okay? That shows that learning happens through interaction. But also, the fact that one is having an interaction, you don't absorb everything. You select things that are relevant to your puzzle pieces, to your puzzle that, So there is a lot of uniqueness in terms of what you take, which updates your cognitive at that point. Okay? Not everything, but you learn. And that is what learning is about. If we accept this, if we accept this kind of theory, that's how learning happens, then the use of tools such as the mobile, we can exploit the smaller chunks of contributions of thoughts from these different layers. They contribute things, smaller chunks of content in a shared pool. And that can actually constitute the co-production of knowledge. And I'm going to give an example of how we have managed to achieve this. Here, there are 3 screens here, and there are 3 screens of a mobile app called the TeachBack mobile app. I developed a mobile app called TeachBack. This TeachBack, it allows learners to teach each other what they have understood. Okay? So we know that the best way to consolidate what you know is to be able to teach back. So what this app does, it allows learners to actually say, look, I have something to teach someone, and therefore I can contribute that. So you actually have on this screen, you have a collection of what learners have posted. Here, on this screen here, another screen, is just a summary of the different contributions that learners have done. And then this one here is when you click on that, you actually see what this particular learner contributed, including they can be able to sign that off. The other is this app here, which is called a school project app. What I had in mind when putting together this app was that the school project app, students were working on different kinds of projects, and they'll go in the field to collect data about the task. And what this app does is that this map here, there are different points of where students are. Every time a student is at a particular point and they are collecting data, they use the app, they post that. These are some of the postings. They post that, and the tool immediately picks the location. And as an educator and as all other students, you can see the different points where these learners were for their projects. And you can actually then allow different kind of conversations to happen about that kind of task. Now, these 2 examples, and I think there's another, this other app, a 3x3 phonics app, was actually was developed by one of my students, who then had an app which would allow students, or which allow learners to take a phonic, like in this case, like M, take an image of that and go through it many times or label it. Okay, you can label, you can take an image of something and you can label that. You know how difficult it is as an educator to actually see whether students are doing something right. What this app does is that when you have students in a class, each one of them could be wanting to label something, like you can have take a plant or whatever stuff, label that. Each one in the class could be labeling something, and the minute they finish labeling, you actually have all what students have done immediately pop up on the app. Okay? And you can see whether students have actually labeled that right or not before you can give them an assignment to do all that. This is what this kind of app does. And students have actually, through the sandpit sessions at HLab, we've had students also create different kinds of apps. Okay? Now, with this kind of process, one is able to then say, well, I have learned something, this is useful, this is not useful, I can build on this for the future. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a round of applause for Prof? Thanks, Prof. You have said a mouthful through images. I'm not sure you can still remember how many images were there in this presentation. Can you still remember how many pictures were there?
Though I had in the middle of the presentation, and I can say that I was very much I benefited from what you actually enlightened us on, which is what actually saying it is the way. Whereby you find that the behaviors of a teacher are different from what the students are actually doing. Now, what I want to find out is what challenges have you found during the investigation that you might have done between the two kinds, between the teaching and then your teaching and the learning school? And the last question is, what do you think are the best solutions and practices to overcome the difference?
Let me take one more. One more question.
Well, I'm not sure whether you're asking about the difference in terms of what teachers teach or educators and how learners learn, and the kind of strategies that one can be able to do about. Well, my experience is that educators do more things, okay? And we know that it was staff to teach these things. What primary school is to actually provide the alternative ways of approaching what I teach. So, and we can actually include these students with the identification of the different pathways of arriving at how they can accomplish whatever task that is set for them. So, being able to ensure that learners feel included in the way you actually want to teach, how you teach, it will not necessarily challenge. It doesn't take you off from what you know. You still remain an expert. But how you teach and how you engage with the students is the choice that you're able to make. And there are lots of different kinds of opportunities that, and these students will surprise you if you give them this kind of approach, an open approach, where you participate in coming up with the best ways of presenting something. For example, you can be able to give the students a task, and then you can be able to say, look, what I really want you to do is to find creative ways of presenting this, this as an outcome of this task. You will be surprised at what you can do once you empower them to do that. So I think it's more about, I've actually found that when you get yourself in a position as an educator where you are prepared to learn from students, and you need to be willing to learn and be open to learn. And I think that is going to become key to us moving forward.
from what you presented from my own experience, what I know is that the educational context is always a very shifting one. You presented, let's say, the difference between the technology in which teachers use in teaching and the ones in which learners use, or students use in learning. But the difference is, what I have seen in some instances is that even when teachers begin to tap into this, the context will always begin to shift. One, for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, it's the interest to study. Some of them come to class, not 100% because they want to learn, but because of times they know I have to be here. I had an instance where Facebook was engaged as a learning platform, for example, as opposed to the normal Blackboard and Moodle, wherein they were supposed to be using to having a discussion generally. But you would discover that reading whatever was even posted there became an issue. It was no longer a platform which was being used. It was now that some of the materials are too long, they should keep it short. They should keep it very short. These long things are very boring to read. By the time you move from there, so instances where people now sitting in class, instead of actually having the discussion they are supposed to have, they are not scrolling through pictures of others and then commenting here and there. Now, what I'm trying to point out is, in as much as we try to engage these platforms, there would always be that shift. There will always be different alternative ways in which they would use to do what they want to do. They don't necessarily visit those platforms because it is where they learn everything they want to. They also visit it for a variety of reasons. How do we move forward from there?
Well, one of the kind of answers to that question is that, remember, if you are so scared of breaking a few points, if you want to learn how to balance them in your head, you'll never achieve anything. Because if you're so worried about how many points are going to fall, then you never try anything. There's also a saying that the man who does not make mistakes is the one who does not do anything. What you really need to begin to realize is that our job and our role as educators is not necessarily to control what students can see or not do, because we don't want to take away agency from them. We know that the use of technologies, they do lead with these technologies when they are with you in class and when they are not with you in class. What becomes useful for us as educators is to ensure that we can design learning activities that can be accomplished beyond the four walls of the classroom. If we design learning activities that these learners can do outside the face-to-face contact sessions, they are going to have to do those tasks. And while doing that, they'll still be able to do what they normally have to do. I don't quite think that our job is really to actually say, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. That's not what our job is. The other thing that we actually need to think about is that you actually want to design for these levels of interaction. Interactions do not happen on the phone. You must design for an interaction. You as an educator, you need to be able to not just say to specific. You need to design for what do you want them to do on Facebook. And what exactly do you want them to do in that Facebook group or in a WhatsApp group? If you don't design, it won't just happen. It's like saying, if you build it, it will come. If you build it, it will come. I have seen most educators who use maybe learning management systems. They create things on the learning management systems. They create discussion forums, they create chat rooms and everything else. And then they still get surprised that nothing is happening. Students are not interacting. interacting, students are not engaged. And I've asked them, have you designed an interaction? Have you designed an activity where what students need to do on this discussion forum? Have you designed anything that you want them to interact on? And then you say no, then how do you expect them to actually do that? Remember, what we need to do is that these students, in as much as they have got access to these devices, in as much as they know how to use these devices, they may not know how to learn with these devices. We need to model how to do that by designing learning activities that use these different tools to actually grow that. And that is why it's important for educators to actually go through some kind of, not training, but they need to identify things to copy. In other words, identify academic staff or doing stuff that they can copy from so that they can be able to get and implement in their own students. That's what they need to do. So I don't quite think that we must be concerned that when I teach my courses, when I teach students, they've got laptops, they've got their phones on, they've got their laptop. So the places, they've got Wi-Fi, they find, again, students they've opened everything they need to open. If I am on top of my game, I know that I will recruit their engagement. So, you understand? If I'm on top of my game, I'm going to recruit the students' engagement on whatever they're working on their machine. I don't have to actually see where one is and develop activities where as they interact, we can actually see what the interactions are, we can be able to design the time we should be able to accomplish it. I'll demonstrate some of these things in the workshop. But that is how we go about doing it.
And was time?
Thank you, Prof.